I'm 36 now, but 8 years ago, I dropped off the face of the earth by choice. No texts, no calls, no explanations. I ghosted my entire family and never looked back. Most people I know now think I had some generic falling out with my folks. Family drama, I say, and leave it there. Even my girlfriend of 2 years, Tasha, believes it was just your average dysfunctional mess. I never told her the truth. At least, not until a few weeks ago when something I found online dragged the past back to the surface like a bloated corpse. Back then, I was 28, living in a small apartment in Milwaukee, trying to piece my life together after a series of career hiccups. I was close with my cousin Damon. Growing up, we were practically brothers. But somewhere along the way, he lost the plot, got into drugs, debt, and eventually trouble with the law. The bomb dropped one cold Tuesday morning. There was a knock on the door, then 3 cops in my living room holding a warrant. Allegations of possession and distribution. I thought they had the wrong guy. I didn't touch that stuff. My apartment was spotless. But they had a sworn statement from Damon. He told them I was the one dealing, that I had access, the connections, the stash, that I was supplying him. It took 3 months of court hearings, subpoenas, and scraping together thousands in legal fees to clear my name. Luckily, I had time-stamped pay stubs, security footage, and GPS records proving I was working out of state during the time of the supposed deal. Case dismissed. I thought that'd be the end of it. It wasn't. My parents, Ellis and Maureen, didn't believe me. Not even a little. They said, "Where there's smoke, there's fire." Said I must have done something to have the cops show up at my door. Accused me of forging my alibi. Said I was dragging our family's name through the mud. That's when I cracked. I'd never been perfect, but I wasn't a liar. I wasn't a criminal. But none of that mattered to them. The final straw? My dad bailed Damon out. Then I found out he'd changed his will. I'd been erased, no longer in line for anything. My mom followed suit a month later. So I did the only thing I could. I disappeared. I packed my stuff and left Wisconsin without saying goodbye. Got a burner phone, new name for job apps. Settled in Colorado Springs with nothing but a duffel bag, a laptop, and the sour taste of betrayal. I did anything to survive tech support, delivery gigs, cleaning busted PCs for resale. My first few months were rough, but I had something I hadn't had in a long time: peace. No judgment. No sideways glances. No shame. Eventually, the first opened a little tech repair shop. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. I got steady clients, good reviews, a sense of control. I met Tasha when she brought in her old MacBook after spilling wine on it. We clicked. Talked a bit too long during pickup. Grabbed lunch the next week. We moved in together a year later. She knew I didn't talk about my family, never pushed, never asked, and I was grateful for that. Then one night, everything unraveled. We were on the couch, scrolling through old Reddit threads about startup scams. I joked about how ridiculous some of the success stories were and decided, just for fun, to Google my own name. I was expecting an ancient blog post or a broken LinkedIn profile. Instead, I found an obituary. Full name, my face, died 5 years ago. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. I laughed it off at first, told Tasha it had to be a mix-up. Some other guy with the same name. But when I clicked the link, it took me to a funeral home's website. There it was, a memorial service, location my hometown, hosted by my parents and my sister Emily. There were guestbook messages, condolences, comments about what a kind soul I was. People reminiscing like I was truly gone. I told Tasha the first needed a minute and locked myself in the bedroom. I couldn't stop staring at the screen. It wasn't just a case of mistaken identity. It was me. The memorial had photos. My sister posted an album titled Rest Easy, Ryan, my old name. Pictures of flower arrangements, people hugging, a closed casket, Damon standing near the front with a smile that made my skin crawl. My parents looked, composed, not broken, not devastated, just there, playing the part. I couldn't use any of my old social accounts. So I created a throwaway and sent friend requests to a few names I recognized from the pictures. Mostly distant relatives or old classmates, just enough to blend in. One of my high school friends, Nate, messaged me back. Said he had been at the memorial. Said it felt weird at the time, but real enough. My name had been on the program. My parents gave short speeches. The story was I died on a solo hiking trip. No body recovered. I asked Nate if anyone ever questioned the story. He said, "Dude, we saw your name, your face. What were we supposed to think?" That's when I knew this wasn't a mistake. My family had declared me dead. I called a friend from college. He works as a legal researcher now. Asked him to dig around for any death certificate or legal filings under my old name. He came back empty-handed. No death record. No social security update. No newspaper obituary. No coroner's report. Just an online memorial and a whole town believing I was gone. The next day, I called the funeral home, used a voice changer app, said I was working on a genealogy project and came across the name. The woman on the phone confirmed there was a closed casket service 5 years ago. No legal documentation, no certificate, just a symbolic tribute, as she put it. That was it. That's how they got away with it. They buried me without ever filing a single form. No wonder they thought I'd never come back. That night, I couldn't sleep. Tasha noticed. She asked what was wrong, so I told her everything. The fake drug charges, the betrayal, the exile, and now this. She didn't say much at first, just held my hand, asked if I was safe. I told her I wasn't sure, because now I knew the truth. My family hadn't just pushed me out of their lives. They had erased me from existence, and I was going to find out why. After I told Tasha the truth, we just sat there for a while. No more scrolling, no more jokes. The silence between us was thick, but not uncomfortable. She didn't try to fix anything or throw out sympathy like a band-aid. She just stayed. I appreciated that more than she knew. I started sleeping even less after that. Every night, I went back to the obituary page, reading it like it would suddenly rewrite itself into something normal, something logical, but it never changed. So I went looking for answers in the only place I could, the digital breadcrumbs my family had no idea they were leaving. I started with my sister, Emily. Her profile was open enough to scroll without following. She'd made occasional posts on my birthday pictures of candles, vague captions like "gone but not forgotten" or "miss you every day." There was never a story, no memory shared, just placeholders, enough to make it look like she cared without saying much. Then I checked my cousin Damon's social media. That part made my stomach turn. There were pictures, family BBQs, holiday dinners, all taken after my so-called death. He was always in the middle of it, laughing, relaxed, like someone who'd finally won a game he was playing alone. And my parents? Still present, smiling in every photo. They looked like they'd aged, sure, but not in the way grief does. More like time just moved on and they didn't have a reason to look back. They really sold it. All of them. I needed to know more. I reached out to my college buddy Marcus, the one who helped me dig before. He put me in touch with a private investigator he trusted, guy named Jay. Retired military, sharp eyes, talked like he hated wasting words. Tasha and I met him at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. I handed him everything. Screenshots, messages, the memorial page, even the fake condolence comments people had left under the funeral post. He didn't say much at first, just nodded and took notes. Then he looked up and said, "They didn't just push you out, they built a whole new world without you." Yeah, that hit. While Jay started his digging, I stayed low. I created a new burner account and joined a private Facebook group for our old neighborhood back in Wisconsin. After a few days of lurking, someone posted about a recent family reunion. A few familiar faces popped up, people the first hadn't seen in years. One comment under a group photo said, "Wish Ryan could have been here. Gone too soon." Another said, "He'd be so proud of Damon now." That's when my jaw clenched. Damon. He wasn't just accepted again, he was thriving. Cleaned up, wearing suits in his profile pics, working for some private finance firm. I looked deeper into his LinkedIn. Senior portfolio analyst. You've got to be kidding me. This guy ruined my name, used me as a scapegoat, stood at a fake funeral for me, and now he was giving investment advice? I scrolled further and found a photo captioned, "Some ghosts never stay buried." No one was tagged. Just a picture of my dad manning a grill at what looked like another family event. I saved it. My hands were shaking. They knew. The next day, I got a DM to the throwaway account. It was from a woman named June. She used to live a few houses down from us when I was a kid. Said she recognized the blurry profile pic I'd used an old park bench we both used to visit. Asked if I was Ryan's cousin or something. I played it safe. Said I was doing a digital scrapbook project for a family tree. She replied, "So weird. I still remember your mom going door to door that week. Said you were lost during a hiking trip. No search, no rescue, nothing. Just a memorial." She added, "Something about it always felt off." Yeah, me too. Back on my end, Jay had started pulling real threads. A few days in, he called with the first concrete find. "Your parents updated their wills 2 years before the memorial," he said. "You were removed completely. No explanation, just a clean cut. My share of the family estate? Redirected to Damon. He was listed as the secondary executor. That had never been part of the original documents. There was more. A property, a second home they used to own, had been fully transferred to Damon just weeks after the memorial service. The legal notes listed estate simplification due to emotional loss. What they really meant? They'd handed him the keys and shut the door behind me. No obituary in the paper. No funeral notice. No public filing of death. Just a story. At this point, I couldn't sit still anymore. I needed something physical to hold on to, some kind of document that would confirm what Jay was uncovering. So I drove 3 towns over to avoid being recognized and filed a request for any public death records under my old name. Just to be sure, nothing came up. I wasn't legally dead. Not in any state, county, or federal registry, only in their version of the world. That night, Tasha found me sitting in the kitchen with the lights off, just staring at a screenshot on my phone. It was Damon again. New profile, freshly made. He'd posted a photo from a bonfire. Caption said, "Even the dead should stay quiet. No likes, no comments. Just floating there like a threat." I told Tasha I was done watching from the sidelines. We needed to build a file, real evidence, legal grade. We organized everything. Social media posts, the funeral page, Jay's findings, the neighbor's message, even Marcus's initial report. Everything got backed up 3 ways: cloud storage, encrypted drives, and a physical binder with tabbed sections. Tasha got me in touch with her dad's old friend, a cybersecurity expert. He'd helped them out years ago when her mom got caught in a scam. Guy was quiet, but brilliant. He ran a sweep across every dormant account I ever had. Bank logins, email, IRS records. Found multiple login attempts from unfamiliar IPs. Someone had tried to access my old tax records, twice. The same year Damon applied for a business loan. Coincidence? Not likely. A week later, Jay hit gold. He traced a 2019 loan application where Damon was the primary applicant, but my social security number was used as a co-signer. The email and phone listed didn't match anything I'd ever used. It was identity theft. Federal level. We flagged it immediately. The bank escalated it to their fraud department. Marcus filed an official report with his law contacts. Jay started compiling more instances of potential misuse. That's when the dominoes started to wobble. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It wasn't just about being dead. They'd buried me to replace me. And now, I was coming back not loud, not angry, not reckless. Just quietly, methodically, with every fact lined up. Because when the time came to confront them, it wouldn't be a reunion. It would be a reckoning. Login attempts, burner accounts, threats. Jay reviewed the whole binder and said one thing: they buried a body without a body. You're the ghost they created. We decided to reach out quietly to someone from the inside. I messaged my Aunt Evelyn, my dad's youngest sister. She was always a little removed from the family politics. Never close, but not cold either. I figured if anyone would speak honestly, it might be her. I used a neutral message. Asked if she ever thought anything was strange about what happened after I passed. She took a full day to respond. Then she replied, "I've always had doubts. But when I asked your mother, she told me not to stir grief. That I was making it harder. So I stayed quiet. But I never stopped wondering." She didn't ask who I was. Didn't try to guess. She just ended with, "If what I think is true, I'm so sorry. Something shifted in me after that. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore, I was reclaiming my name. Jay started interviewing people who used to work with Damon. One former colleague agreed to speak off the record, said Damon always bragged about cutting dead weight from his life after the memorial. That he kept saying, "No more loose ends." That line hit hard. I had been the loose end. And in their minds, they tied me off neatly until I showed up again. At this point, Marcus, the legal researcher, looped in a fraud attorney he knew from Chicago, a guy named Nolan, known for handling complex identity theft cases. We sent him a secure packet with everything. It took him a day to go through it. His reply was short but powerful. "We have a case. Let's make it official." He outlined our first steps: file formal identity theft reports with state and federal agencies, request a forensic audit of the family trust through civil court, submit digital threat reports based on Raj's trace and the private message, notify institutions of document fraud, starting with the bank that issued Damon's loan. It was happening. And once it started, there was no turning back. Just before we filed, something strange happened. Damon's social profiles vanished. All of them. Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn John. Scrubbed clean like he'd never existed online. But it was too late. We had already archived every post, every comment, every interaction. He could hide from the internet, but not from paper. Not from timestamps. Not from truth. By the end of the week, Nolan filed the first 3 legal complaints. Each one came with attached exhibits, screenshots, signatures, logs, statements. And then came the wild card. Raj traced another burner account tied to someone logging into an old financial database using my credentials. But the twist? That account had also accessed our local DMV's vehicle registration portal using my name, and it requested a renewal for a vehicle registered to Damon. My cousin wasn't just pretending I was gone. He was still using me. That night, I took everything we had and started drafting a letter. Not to my parents, not to Damon, to the rest of the family, aunts, uncles, cousins, people who had shared those funeral photos, who had commented "RIP" under the fake obituary, who'd said nothing but probably wondered, deep down, if the story ever made sense. The letter wasn't emotional. It was a timeline. Facts, dates, documents, screenshots. I didn't ask for sympathy. I didn't ask for anything at all. I just wanted them to know the truth, so that next time someone said, "Ryan's gone," they'd at least think twice. When you grow up in a family like mine, you're taught that silence is loyalty. Keep your mouth shut. Don't stir things up. Don't embarrass anyone. But silence is where rot grows. By the time we filed the first legal documents, I'd been silent for nearly 8 years. Long enough for them to write their version of the story. Long enough for them to believe I'd never return. That's what made this next step so different. This wasn't just digging for the truth anymore. It was speaking it out loud. The first report we submitted went to the Federal Trade Commission. It covered the forged co-signature on the 2019 loan, including the mismatched contact info, false identification, and the IP logs Raj had pulled. The second went to the Social Security Administration, flagging the fraudulent use of my SSN in at least 2 financial applications and 1 DMV record. The third was local. Our city's Financial Crimes Unit, a formal complaint, backed by Nolan, listing multiple potential felonies. Within 72 hours, we got our first response from the bank where Damon had applied for the loan. They were launching an internal audit. Things were moving. Meanwhile, Jay had been pressing into property records with even more precision. That's when he uncovered a second house one I didn't even know existed. It had been purchased under a shell company just 2 months after my fake funeral. The owner of record? A now defunct LLC registered in Wisconsin. The mailing address? A virtual PO box tied to Damon's old email address. Jay flagged it immediately. He ran the tax filings on the property, and sure enough, there was a signature. My signature. Except I'd never seen those papers before. We brought in a forensic handwriting expert to compare. 2 days later, we had confirmation, forged. The LLC, the purchase, the signature, all fake. All in my name. At this point, Nolan said we needed to prepare for escalation. Not just legal, but personal. People were going to find out. The wall of silence my family had relied on was about to crack. I knew he was right, so I went back to the letter I'd written, the one addressed to all the relatives who had stood around my closed casket and nodded along. I turned it into a video. No narration, no face, just text slides. Each slide had a timestamp, a document, a screenshot, a short note, side-by-side comparisons. A photo of my fake obituary next to the death record search that came back empty. A picture of the memorial next to the loan application filed 2 years after I died. The burner message, "You should have stayed dead." The caption Damon posted, "Some ghosts never stay buried." The final slide was just one line. "If this was your name, your face, your life, would you stay quiet?" I uploaded it as an unlisted link and sent it to 20 people. No intro, no explanation, just the truth. 3 days later, it started. First, a message from my cousin Jenna, someone I hadn't heard from since college. She wrote, "Is this real? Please tell me this isn't real." Then one from my uncle's wife. I had questions back then. "Your mom shut me down hard. I didn't know what to think. I'm sorry." Then silence. Like a ripple spreading out into deep water, quiet at first, until something breaks the surface. That break came fast. Someone forwarded me a screenshot from the family group chat, one I hadn't been part of in years. It was my mother. She'd posted a long message calling me a disturbed individual, claiming I was using photoshopped lies to attack the people who raised him. She ended with, "He's doing this to destroy our family, just like before." The irony was thick. They held a funeral for me, and now I was the one destroying things? That message sparked over 50 replies. Most were just confused. One person asked a question no one answered. If he was dead, why wasn't there an obituary in the paper? That same night, Nolan got a cease and desist email from a law office claiming to represent my parents. It was dramatic, called our case emotional warfare and digital harassment. Nolan's response was simple: "We are prepared to defend every claim under oath. Let us know when your clients are ready." They didn't reply. Instead, they went quiet, really quiet. No more posts. No more group messages. No more public defenses. Just the eerie stillness of people realizing the ground beneath them isn't solid anymore. But Damon? He couldn't resist. A few days later, a new profile popped up. Fresh username, one post, a photo of a campfire. Caption, "Some things don't stay buried without reason." Same tone, same intent. It wasn't just about warning me anymore. It was a threat. We archived it and passed it to the detective assigned to our case. That tipped things into motion. With the digital evidence, forged documents, and voicemail, the local police officially opened a criminal investigation into identity theft and fraud. A detective from the Financial Crimes Division was assigned. He wasn't flashy, looked more like a tired accountant than a cop, but his questions were sharp. He asked about motive, about money, about timing, and about silence. That was the part that hit the hardest, how they'd kept the lie going for so long. No real paper trail, no questions, just enough ritual to convince people I was gone. A lie told often enough starts to feel like truth, until the truth shows up with documents. By then, Raj had uncovered 2 more attempted logins tied to my social security number. One was routed through a VPN in Denver. The other? A public network at a country club in Wisconsin. Guess who's a member there? Damon. We didn't need to guess anymore. We had receipts. The last blow that week came through Jay. He managed to track down the pastor who had led the fake memorial. Guy had moved out of state and taken up a quieter life. Jay called him under the pretense of needing clarification for a legal record. The pastor remembered the service. Said the family insisted on a symbolic-only event. Said they didn't want a viewing. Didn't want a coroner involved. No death certificate. No obituary. He thought it was strange, but not unheard of. Said some families do it for closure when a person goes missing. Except I wasn't missing. I was breathing, working, living. And now I was proving it. We forwarded the pastor's statement to the detective and filed a request for depositions, sworn interviews from my parents and Damon. No lawsuit yet, but close. The subpoenas would require them to sit down and explain everything, under oath, with no script, no stage. That same day, Damon's employer received a copy of our digital packet. His job? Senior analyst at a private wealth management firm. The evidence we sent included screenshots of the forged loan application tied to my SSN, the shell company tied to the fake property, and a full timeline of the identity misuse. 2 days later, he was suspended. 5 days later, terminated. I didn't feel joy. No victory lap. Just this quiet shift. For years, they'd lived with the weight of a lie. Now they were finally starting to feel it. And that weight? It was only getting heavier. After Damon lost his job, everything around him started unraveling fast. He deleted his remaining profiles, disappeared online like a ghost. But it was too late. Every photo, every post, every comment had already been copied and stored. You can't scrub a lie when the internet's already breathing it in. The case was out of the shadows now. No more creeping around with screenshots and burner accounts. No more quiet circles. We were preparing for open court. The subpoenas went out first, formal depositions for my parents and Damon. They couldn't ignore it. Legal process servers delivered the documents by hand. That meant they knew. And they knew we were serious. I expected silence. What I got was noise. My father showed up at Tasha's workplace. He didn't say a word to her directly. Just walked in, found the front desk, and started making a scene. Loud, aggressive, demanding to speak with someone in charge. Security intervened fast, but not before he dropped one line that sent a chill down her spine. He has no idea what he's doing. Police were called. He was escorted off the property. A formal harassment report was filed, and the building issued a no trespassing order. Tasha was shaken but calm. She knew this wouldn't stop us. That incident went straight into our legal file. Nolan and I met again the next day. We reviewed everything: dates, claims, exhibits, Raj's IP trace logs, the forged loan applications, the voicemail, the social media posts, Jay's notes on the real estate shell company, Pastor's statement, and Evelyn's messages, handwriting expert's report, DMV signature mismatch. The folder was now a book, over 150 pages. Every page had a timestamp. Every lie had a receipt. We filed the motion for a full forensic audit of the family trust. The court approved it. An outside team of accountants began combing through every dollar that moved through the estate since the year of my death. Bank records, wire transfers, tax filings. Everything was fair game. What they found was more than just shady, it was criminal. Roughly $197,000 had been routed through a fake company registered under a generic LLC name. That same company listed Damon as its managing partner. The mailing address? A P.O. box linked to a private financial office he used before getting hired at the firm. He'd been using the family trust like a private checking account. Electronics, flights, luxury car rentals, even payments for consulting billed back to the trust. All of it on paper, all of it traceable. We filed to freeze the estate's activity and remove Damon as a trustee. Around the same time, 2 former employees from one of Damon's dissolved businesses reached out to Jay, quietly. They didn't want to testify yet, but they sent receipts. Literal ones. High-end expenses charged to the family account. Personal items. None of it business-related. All of it logged under emergency disbursements. They also said Damon used to brag. Said he called himself the new head of the table after the memorial. One employee remembered him joking, "No more legacy to fight with." That one stayed with me. Tasha's father, a retired judge, offered to help organize the testimony preparation. He wasn't official counsel, just experience in a storm. We sat down together and created a timeline grid. 3 columns. What happened? What they said, what we can prove by the end of the week. The columns told a story no one could talk their way out of. The deposition date arrived. Damon didn't show. His attorney did. But halfway through the session, the attorney stood up and withdrew from the case. On record, said Damon had withheld material information and compromised the integrity of discovery. That was legal speak for he lied to his own lawyer. My parents submitted written statements. They didn't appear in person either, but the statements didn't help them. They contradicted each other. One said I'd disappeared and left no message. The other claimed I'd sent a final goodbye. Problem was, neither version matched the actual timeline. And neither could explain the photos of my funeral, with them standing in front of a closed casket, or the fact that I was very much alive. Their letters went into evidence. I stayed quiet through most of this, but I was there for every second, every email, every filing, every notarized copy. And then something unexpected came from Evelyn, my aunt. She messaged me again, this time from a new email account, said she'd found something, asked if she could meet. We agreed to meet at a diner 2 towns over. She showed up nervous, wearing sunglasses and checking over her shoulder like she was in a spy movie. But when she slid the envelope across the table, her hands didn't shake. Inside were 2 letters, both written by my mother, sent to extended relatives weeks after the memorial. The language was chilling. He chose to disappear. His mind was unstable. He wasn't safe to be around. We held the service not because he was gone, but because we couldn't save him. I had never been diagnosed with any mental health issue. I had no history of instability, and I certainly hadn't disappeared. They pushed me away, then wrote me off. The letters were designed to justify everything. Why they didn't file official documents, why no one should ask questions, and why silence was kindness. We submitted those letters to the court. Along with a certified mental health evaluation Nolan had arranged months earlier, I met with a licensed clinical psychologist for multiple sessions. The final report was crystal clear: no history of instability, no signs of delusion, no psychological concerns. The lie wasn't just false, it was weaponized. They didn't just erase me. They tried to discredit the idea that I ever should have been there in the first place. The judge issued a no-contact protective order against Damon and my father. Based on the voicemail, the forged records, the incident at Tasha's job, and the psychological manipulation laid out in those letters, it was approved within the hour. They were barred from contacting me or anyone in my household. All future communication had to go through legal channels. A week later, the audit team came back with something new. An old family land parcel, something small, but tied to my late grandfather, had been partially sold off. The transfer documents listed me as a co-signer, again forged. But this time, the notary signature on the form didn't even belong to a licensed notary. The person listed had no certification in the state at the time. That single error cracked open a new door. Forgery of legal documents. A felony. We added it to the pile. The final twist came from the same guy who sent me the anonymous burner message before. You should have stayed dead. He sent one more, this time through email. Subject line, none. Message, you were dead to us the day you stopped playing your part. I forwarded it to Nolan, then blocked the account. No response. No drama. No energy wasted. They weren't going to get my silence. Or my fear. Not anymore. We were less than a month from the court date now. Civil charges had been filed. Criminal charges were next. Depositions done. Evidence organized. Witnesses on standby. The courtroom wouldn't be the end of this story, but it would be the first time they had to say my name without pretending I didn't exist. And this time, the world would be listening. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not the air, but the energy. Like no one was there to comfort or congratulate, just to witness. We weren't the only case on the docket that day, but it felt like we were. People sat silently, faces neutral, eyes flicking between the lawyers and the stack of documents we brought in, like it might catch fire on its own. No camera crews, no family drama playing out in whispers, just the sharp smell of paper and polished wood and the weight of what we were about to unfold. This wasn't revenge. This was resurrection. The judge opened proceedings with a calm tone, nothing theatrical. He read the summary of charges aloud: identity theft, document forgery, financial fraud, estate manipulation. Damon sat at the defense table alone. No smirk, no sunglasses, just pale skin, a tight jaw, and a suit that didn't make him look powerful anymore, just trapped. My parents weren't there. They'd submitted more written testimony, but even those were riddled with contradictions. The judge noted the inconsistencies before we said a single word. Then they called me to the stand. I didn't shake. I didn't look at anyone. I raised my hand, swore the oath, and sat down. Then I told them what happened. Not with emotion, not with dramatic flair, just the truth. How I was falsely accused. How my cousin lied to save himself. How my family sided with him. How they watched me prove my innocence and still turned away. How I left and how they took that as an opportunity to pretend I'd never existed. I walked them through every fake document, every piece of fraud, every time my name was signed by a hand that wasn't mine. Then I said something that even surprised me. They didn't just try to erase me. They tried to take what I would have built in my name. And when they realized I might come back, they buried the evidence under sympathy and silence. There was a pause in the room after that, a quiet sort of respect. I didn't cry, but I did breathe deeper than I had in years. Next came the forensic accountant. She presented a detailed trail of how funds were siphoned through the fake LLC tied to Damon. Every flight, every car rental, every consulting fee with no recipient. The numbers weren't small. Over $200,000 gone. The accountant also flagged how some of the withdrawals matched dates when family members had posted vague tributes to my memory like, every RIP post was a distraction from another transaction. Then came Raj, who explained how Damon tried to access dormant accounts tied to my SSN. He showed IP logs, timestamps, and location data tied directly to the country club Damon used. He ended with the fake email accounts, the threats. You should have stayed dead. Jay, the investigator, testified next. He walked through the forged real estate paperwork, the fake signature, the notary who never existed. The company used to shift land rights away from me and back into Damon's control. Then the psychologist took the stand. She reviewed her sessions with me and clearly stated, no history of psychological instability, no indication of delusion. The letters suggesting otherwise were a fabrication used to justify the family's actions. Finally, Aunt Evelyn stepped up. She told the judge how she was pressured to stay quiet, how questions were discouraged, how grief was used as a shield. She said, I believed them because I loved them. But now I see they used that love to keep me silent. The judge looked at Damon and asked if he wanted to speak. He didn't. He sat there, hands folded, eyes down. He knew. His silence said more than any defense ever could. The ruling came a week later. Damon was found guilty on all counts. Identity theft, forgery of legal documents, estate fraud, unauthorized use of a social security number. He was sentenced to 7 years in state prison with no eligibility for early release. The judge didn't hold back. This wasn't a single act of desperation. It was a long-term deception, calculated and cruel. You didn't just lie, you built a world where your own cousin's name meant profit. That world ends today. As for my parents, they weren't criminally charged, but they were held financially liable for enabling the fraud and manipulating estate documentation. Over $300,000 in damages were ordered against them. The court placed liens on their property and seized their remaining portion of the family trust. The trust itself dissolved. The court ordered a third-party administrator to rebuild it from scratch this time, with oversight. They were also served with a permanent no-contact order. They can never reach out to me again, not directly, not through third parties, not online. Every future communication must go through my lawyer. After the trial, I didn't walk out feeling victorious. I walked out feeling grounded. Not free, not clean, but solid. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need them to cry. I just needed the world to know the truth. And it did. A few weeks later, a small legal journal published a feature on the case. It wasn't sensational, it focused on the gaps in estate law that made cases like mine possible. That article spread quietly through law circles and fraud prevention forums. I was approached by a nonprofit that helps victims of familial financial abuse. They asked if I would consult on a survivor guide they were building. I said yes, not because I wanted to be a symbol, but because I wanted no one else to feel as alone as I did for those 8 years. Tasha and I moved shortly after, not because we were scared, but because it was time. We needed new air. She found a cabin-style rental on the edge of a quiet town, big trees, slow mornings. The kind of place where the loudest thing is your own thoughts, and they're finally quiet enough to hear. We planted a garden, grew tomatoes, fixed the porch steps. Sometimes, I'd stand in the kitchen late at night, looking out over the yard, and wonder what would have happened if I'd never Googled my name that night. But then I remind myself this wasn't the night everything broke. It was the night I found the pieces. and chose to rebuild, the last thing I did was change my name. Legally. Fully. A new last name, I chose myself one that meant something. Not from blood, but from strength. I filed the paperwork, attended the hearing, signed it with a steady hand. It felt like turning the last page of a book I never asked to read. Now, when people ask about my family, I still keep it simple, but not vague. I say, we don't speak anymore. And if they ask why, I just smile. Long story. But I survived it. Story 2, I've been married to my wife Soraya for a little more than a year, and I'm 32 years old. I got to know her family rather well throughout the 3 years we dated before getting married. At least I believed I did. At first, I was unaware that I was seeing more than simply Soraya. In addition, I was being subtly compared to someone who had already entered and exited her life, Liam, her ex-boyfriend. Before splitting up, Liam and Soraya were together for 5 years. I understand that's a long time. People make an impact, but this is unlike anything I've ever seen. I had heard about him from the beginning. Her parents used to tell her stories about how he once assisted with roof repairs or how he prepared the tastiest mashed potatoes for Thanksgiving. At one point, her sister mentioned how Liam used to assist in planning the family's summer excursions. It didn't seem like a huge problem at first. It was only casual allusions and short chat. It was during our engagement meal that the first real red flag appeared. Liam always had a plan, her father continued, lifting his glass. He then looked to me and said, "You're a little more idealistic." Since there was nothing more I could do at the time, I joined in the laughter. However, it was uncomfortable. I became aware that they hadn't quite moved on from Liam at that point. The situation didn't improve after that. He would be smuggled into talks by her mother. "It's great that you work for yourself," she would add. However, at your age, Liam was already in management. Or Liam was always so well organized. He even organized their shopping trips. I didn't respond. I believed that if I remained kind and concentrated on Soraya, they would ultimately move on from the past. It was worst around the holidays. Her sister said nonchalantly that her brother used to joke that Liam used to wake up early to prepare the turkey and then gaze at me as if he was waiting for a reaction when the Christmas lights went down. This would have been resolved by Liam by now. These weren't only recollections. They were consistent and constituted comparisons. In reality, Soraya confronted them before to our wedding. She advised them to cease equating me with her former partner. They expressed regret and pledged to improve. To be fair, they did retreat for a few months. But by the time spring arrived, it began to reappear. It was more subdued this time. Her dad would mention how Liam used to accompany them on volunteer initiatives, and her mom would reminisce about the good old days. The message was always there, even if they never said anything overtly offensive. I wasn't him. When Soraya received a job opportunity last year, we relocated to a different city. She was unable to resist. I believed the distance would be beneficial, less pressure, less touch. However, the comparisons continued even during video calls. In order to provide us greater security, her father once asked whether I had considered going corporate. Soraya was questioned by her mother if I was comfortable with her taking the lead financially. The sentence that remained with me then came. Liam would never have let her to do anything around the house, her sister said, laughing. Soraya was on my side most of the time. She reminded them that we were joyful and begged them to stop. However, she occasionally shared their laughter, most likely to maintain harmony. And I didn't want to admit how much that hurt. It gave me the impression that I was alone in this strange tournament that I had never entered. Our most recent trip to her parents' house was the turning point. A framed picture of Soraya and Liam at a New Year's Eve celebration appeared on the mantel as soon as we entered the living room, grinning as if they were still together, arms wrapped around one another. "Oh, that one just brings back so many memories," her mother commented as she noticed me examining. "I don't mind. That night, it's simply nostalgia." I inquired if Soraya's relatives continued to speak with Liam. After some hesitation, she acknowledged that her mother still occasionally wrote him to see how he was doing. At that point, everything made sense to me. They were doing more than reminiscing. Though it was only in the background, they were nevertheless involving him. They seemed to have never parted ways with him. For a few days, I sat with it, attempting to make up my mind. I then researched him. He was engaged, lived just 2 hours away, worked in technology, and seemed to be doing well. And then I had a thought. I had had enough of arguing with her relatives. I wasn't going to insist that they remove the picture or ask them to stop talking about Liam. Rather, I wanted to bring Liam into the room as the person he had become, not as a ghost of a prior relationship, not in retaliation. Because the Liam they were talking about was no longer there, they held up a mirror to this image of him that they were enamored with, not to make anybody feel inferior. And perhaps they would finally let him go if they could see it. A common connection on a business website led me to Liam's profile. His profile photo appeared to be recent. His beard was a little more trimmed than it had been in the old pictures her family had saved. I sent a brief, straightforward message. I identified myself as Siria's spouse and inquired if he would be amenable to a brief conversation. That day, he responded. It was a kind, even affectionate message. He said he hoped life was treating us well, and that he had heard about me via Siria's relatives. He sounded not resentful. He appeared interested in my purpose, if anything. That evening, we had a quick phone conversation. It was brief. I assured him that although I didn't harbor any animosity against him, her family continued to treat him as though he were a member of the family. Liam said that he was once uneasy about it as well. Her parents had remained in contact even after their divorce. The type of things that most people get over, like holiday greetings and sporadic check-ins. They always seemed more interested in the concept of him than in the actual person, even if he claimed he didn't mind. I was able to flog the notion because of that. The next weekend, a family meal was scheduled. It was a large one. Soraya, her brothers, their partners, his parents, and a few family acquaintances. Knowing that it may be awkward, I politely asked Liam if he would think about dropping by for a little while. I didn't want to start a fight, but I wanted to see what would happen if the past entered the same room as the present. After pausing, he remarked that he was interested to see how they would react if they finally saw him. When I informed Soraya, he agreed to come, but she looked at me as if she hadn't heard me correctly. I described the plan's development in detail. She said nothing at first, then nodded and stated she wouldn't stop it if Liam was cool with it. No one was warned by her. Her parents hosted the supper. Mismatched chairs and a long table were gathered from each room. Her mom's typical roasted chicken spread, baked potatoes, to a variety of sides. By the time Liam entered via the back door, everyone was seated and halfway through their drinks. It happened instantly. Her father got up so quickly that his chair tumbled over. As if he hadn't seen his own kid in years, he crossed the room and gave Liam a hug. Her mother signaled for someone to clear the table with a clap of her hands. Her sister appeared both astonished and thrilled. Her brother nodded quickly at him. With a smile on his face, Liam welcomed them as if they were a casual guest. Siria's father took out a bottle of whiskey from a drawer in the china cabinet. He had stated that he was keeping the bottle for a particular occasion, so it wasn't just any bottle. Saying something about how it had been too long and that certain visitors were worth opening the good stuff for, he poured Liam a glass and passed it over the table to him. I said very little. I observed. Soraya also remained silent. She folded her hands and sat next to me. There was nothing obvious about her face. However, I could see the stress rising in her shoulders each time someone spoke a tale about Liam. If Liam recalled the hiking excursion to that woodland park, her sister inquired. The one whose bridge broke? Her mother immediately jumped in and asked him to repeat the narrative after he nodded. Liam agreed, providing the same information. They laughed all the way back to the car, and I had already heard firsthand how he used fallen branches to create a temporary route. Soraya finally said anything at that point. Without raising her voice, she stated bluntly that Liam was no longer family. She didn't request that they halt. I just reminded them of the changes. You don't just erase that kind of history, her father remarked, turning to face her. Some people leave a mark. Liam appeared to want to curl up in his chair. He paused before continuing with a different type of anecdote about how he and Soraya used to quarrel over how much her parents attempted to influence her decisions while they were dating. The tone of the table was altered by his remark, which was light, like a reminiscence. After then, the conversation slowed. About his fiancée, I questioned him. With a smile, He took out his phone and showed us a few photos of her at a park with a dog and on a mountain route. At a fancy dinner, another one, Carla was her name, they appeared content. After a moment of scrolling, he looked at Soraya. Me? Oh, he said. He said that he hoped her family would ultimately accept the fact that Soraya had obviously met someone who now better matches her life. No one immediately responded. Her dad glanced at his plate. In order to replenish beverages that didn't require it, her mother got up. Her sister pretended to be busy while grabbing her phone. Reaching for his drink, Liam put his phone away. In courteous silence, we concluded the dinner. No more tales, no more recollections. Liam thanked them for supper after dessert and quietly walked out the front door. That night, nobody mentioned anything. Without a word, Soraya and I headed upstairs after the supper. We spent some time sitting on the bed's edge. The evening had progressed far farther than any of us had anticipated, yet there was no heated discussion or disagreement. We had underestimated Liam's ability to handle it. Nothing was stirred by him. He wasn't arrogant. He remained courteous, responded to their inquiries, and departed without making a disturbance. An hour or so later, I received a brief message from him stating that her family was still a little alarmed and that he hoped it provided me with some clarification. I took a while to respond. Soraya simply nodded when I presented it to her. Soraya's phone rang the following morning with a lengthy message from her mother. She was angry that we hadn't informed them of Liam's arrival. "It's unjust," she added, and she would want time to prepare not emotionally, but literally to bake his favorite dessert and arrange an extra dish. Her father didn't text, apparently. He dialed. When I picked him up, he joked that I had the courage to make such a move, but his tone was light at first. Beneath it was something tight, as if he was striving to maintain his composure. I didn't participate. We just informed him that we believed it was time for them to see Liam as a genuine person once more. A recollection, but more than that. Later that day, Soraya's sister uploaded a group photo from the dinner that included Liam, but she didn't mention how annoying his presence had been. "The more things change, the more they stay the same," the caption said. Cousins and several family acquaintances began to leave comments. All hazy, all odd. I didn't dispute it. I've just written a remark below. I am happy to have finally met the legendary person everyone talks about. Syria's brother sent me a private message a few hours later. It wasn't cordial. He accused me of trying to sow discord in the family and that I was being rude. He advised me to give up attempting to compete with someone who was no longer even present. I didn't answer. I showed Soraya. He was prevented by her. A week passed. Nothing else entered. After that, we joined her parents and siblings on a pre-arranged video call. This was meant to be a catch-up. I mentioned it before her mother, who was going to show off the new garden design. I told them that I was sick of being compared to someone who was no longer in their lives and that I didn't want them to forget the past, but rather that I wanted the present to be more important than a person they hadn't had a meaningful conversation with in years. I was overanalyzing it, her father said, leaning back. That comparisons weren't the point. Liam was all they liked. That was it, not a huge deal. Liam had always been special, her mother added. And perhaps people are like that. Stronger impressions are left by some people than by others. Soraya stopped nodding along at that point. She was direct in her statement. We stopped attending events if they were unable to respect our relationship and continued to bring Liam along. No more holidays, no more birthdays, no more family dinners. If they wanted Liam so badly, they could invite him instead. Her mother started crying. She said we were trying to erase their memories, that they weren't allowed to even talk about good times anymore. That cutting them off over a few stories was cruel. About an hour after that call ended, someone else chimed in. Unexpectedly, Liam had found the photo of her sister posted and left a comment. It was short. "They've moved on. Maybe you all should too." The post was deleted within minutes. Not hidden, deleted completely. Then Soraya's sister blocked both of us. No message, just gone. We didn't reach out again that night. I told Sari I didn't want to spend another holiday pretending everything was fine. I didn't want to sit at that table with people who kept dragging the past into the room with us, she agreed. No argument. She picked up her phone and sent a message to both her parents. It was short and to the point. We were taking space. We wouldn't be attending any more gatherings until things changed. Until they stopped turning Liam into some kind of measuring stick, no one replied to the message. No one called. And for once, that silence actually said something. Soraya sent the message a few days after the video call. She didn't soften it. No ambiguous phrasing. She stated explicitly that we were standing back from all family functions moving ahead due of the continual comparisons and the contempt for our marriage. She finished it by saying we weren't open to talk unless things genuinely changed. Then she turned off her phone for the remainder of the night. For 4 days, there was stillness on the 5th day. Her father eventually reacted with a single phrase, "Guess you made your pick. Nothing else. No explanation. No apologies." Just that a few hours later, her sister sent a torrent of messages blaming me for everything she said. Soraya used to be close with her family until I got in her brain. She finished it by calling her unfaithful and selfish. Her brother replied with a much shorter note, but it was much more straightforward. According to him, she was ruining the family for someone who would never be able to replace what they had. Neither of them received a response from Soraya. Both numbers were banned by her. That was the end of it. No texts, no calls, no way to get back to us. The following holiday, we were with my parents. It wasn't really elaborate. Only supper at home. After dessert, some board games and a stroll around the neighborhood. It was hard to overlook the energy disparity. No stress. Nobody is mentioning ex-partners. Nobody was behaving as though we were feigning happiness. It was just another calm day. I received a message from Liam while we were there. It came as a surprise. He said that his father, Sarah, had unexpectedly sent him an email. The email seemed odd, but it wasn't very long. The next time he was in town, he asked Liam if he wanted to go out for a drink. He continued to write that he still thought Liam was the greatest man Soraya had ever known in the final phrase. Liam assured me he didn't intend to respond and included a screenshot. More than anything else, he claimed. It frightened him. After pausing, Soraya turned on her voice recorder and delivered her father a controlled but unmistakably forceful message. She advised him not to get in touch with Liam ever again. Not for anyone, not for the phone, not for email, and not for any reason. She didn't inquire. She informed him that she took a screenshot of the message and, a few days later, erased the thread. Syria received a picture from an old acquaintance from her homeland. Her parents had invited a few of their neighbors around for a little supper. The same framed picture of her and Liam, which her mother used to keep hidden away, ostensibly for sentimental reasons, was displayed in the backdrop on the mantel above the fireplace. It was visible, back-centered, and next to the family portrait that had been taken during our wedding. Soraya and I sat together that evening and came to an agreement. Our efforts to manage this delicately were over. We would no longer justify ourselves. We had no intention of arguing over recollections or demanding justice. Soraya penned a letter after opening her laptop. It was not a call for reform. It was a record. She documented everything, even the supper where they treated him as like he had never gone and the initial comparison of me to Liam. The stories they told again and over again, she incorporated. The whiskey bottle they kept for him, the picture on the mantel. She said how they made fun of our relationship as though it were a passing fad. How they attempted to enlist Liam once more without getting her permission. Ultimately, she concluded by stating that she no longer saw them as a secure aspect of her life. Even though we didn't wait for a response, one did arrive. Her mother left us a lengthy, sobbing message that contained many of the same things we had previously heard. She said that I was manipulating Soraya and that she was once so close to them that it wasn't right for me to turn her against her family. She said that she no longer recognized her daughter. Then she hung up, crying. Soraya remained silent. Both of her parents were banned. The final available channel was that one. Her siblings had already been separated. Her parents were now as well. No emails, messages, or phone calls. Nothing. We didn't just sit there and hope they got it. We didn't hold off till they were updated. We took a step ahead. Although neither of us was able to alter them, we could deny them access to our tranquility. Just because they were connected by blood did not mean that we owed them a place at our table. It became evident that they had no room for the present the more they clung to the version of the past they desired. That evening, we made one more choice. No more attempts to loop them back in, no more updates, and no more check-ins. We had had enough of pretending to be someone else's version of ourselves. The ensuing stillness didn't seem like something was missing for the first time. It seemed as though the volume had finally been lowered. Since the majority of her family members were restricted on social media and phones, Soraya and I focused on ourselves, something we hadn't done in a while. We scheduled weekly meetings with a local couples therapist. Nothing between us needed to be fixed, so we went in. We entered to examine the work that had already been completed by others. The majority of the work focused on Soraya, her family's habits, decision-making processes as a child, and the significance of her parents' viewpoints were all questions the therapist questioned. Soraya discussed how agreeing, modifying, and maintaining harmony has always been necessary to be a good daughter. She was somehow led to think that she was abandoning them by pursuing her own career, particularly with a partner they disapproved of. I brought up something we had been putting off for more than a year during the first few weeks of therapy, our honeymoon. Due to work and family obligations, we had not gone after the wedding. It seemed like the appropriate moment. There will be no more updates, no more check-ins. Why we were taking time for ourselves doesn't need to be explained. In silence, we made the reservation. No shared calendars, no social media posts. With the exception of our emergency contacts and travel apps, we shut everything off. Other than hotel employees and the occasional tour guide, we didn't hear from anyone for 10 full days. When we returned, our inbox was free of drama. No guilt, no missed calls. Within a week, that was different. One afternoon, a longtime friend from Syria's hometown called. She had been informed that Soraya had severed her family ties for a male. They were passing around that line. The prevailing narrative seemed to be that I had coerced Soraya into isolating, brainwashing, and blocking her parents. Our side was not requested by the friend. She simply repeated what she had heard and hung up. Without saying anything, Soraya blocked her. One of Soraya's former college professors emailed her shortly after, stating that her mother had gotten in touch with him and that Soraya was not herself and might require assistance. Although he wasn't sure what to believe, the professor said he reached out in case it was true. Soraya thanked him, gave him a thorough explanation of the circumstances, and reassured him that she was all right. At that point, it ceased to be mere rumors. It was in motion now. Her mother was not merely narrating tales. She was portraying a crisis and interacting with those from Syria's past. The professor was being asked to step in after he hadn't spoken to her in more than 5 years. We used a third party to write one last message. It wasn't sent straight to her parents. We forwarded it to a neutral third party, an aunt of Syria's who had avoided the drama. The message was succinct and straightforward. We would file a harassment and defamation lawsuit against her parents if they persisted in disseminating false information or corresponding with others on Syria's behalf. Liam messaged me a few days later to let me know that Syria's mother had sent his fiancé an email. The subject line was family brunch. Inside, there was an invitation to come by for a Sunday meal and reconnect with everyone. No mention of the past drama, no mention of Syria, just a casual invite as if nothing had ever happened. They didn't reply. They blocked her immediately. That was the confirmation we needed. It wasn't about reconnecting. It was about controlling the narrative, making sure someone, somewhere, still bought into the idea that Liam belonged more than I did, that Soraya had made a mistake, that there was still time to fix things. I started collecting everything: screenshots, emails, message logs. I brought it all to our lawyer, who reviewed it and said we were well within our rights to file a cease and desist. We didn't send it yet, but we had it ready, documented and signed. Around the same time, Soraya walked into a government office and started the process to legally change her last name to mine. It wasn't something I ever asked for. It wasn't something we had even talked about recently. But she said she was ready not to erase anything, but to mark where the old story ended and where the new one began. We didn't tell anyone about the name change, just kept it between us and our lawyer to ensure it stayed private. We didn't proclaim it or celebrate it, but the instant she received the papers back, she framed a copy of it and placed it on our bookshelf next to a little photo of the two of us on the first day in our new city. A silent line had been drawn, and this time it wasn't in chalk. Not long after Syria's name change became official, we got an envelope from a legal practice none of us recognized. Inside was a stop and desist letter received by her own parents. The accusation was that Soraya had defamed them through public falsehoods and had ruined their reputation among family and community people. The terminology was stiff, but the purpose was apparent. They weren't ready to let go. They just wanted control back. We brought the letter to our lawyer. He read it, shook his head, and stated it was more of a scare technique than a true legal threat. There was no genuine case behind it. He put it away along with everything else we had documented thus far. Screenshots, emails, the brunch invite to Liam's fiancé, and the note delivered to Syria's old professor. On his suggestion, we wrote a formal stop and desist letter back. This time, the message was straightforward and plain. It would be considered harassment and subject to legal action if there were any more attempts to meddle in our lives, including contacting individuals from our past, using Syria's name or likeness, or spreading false information. Her parents said, "Understood. We won't be in touch with you anymore." That was something we could point to, but we didn't think it meant anything would stop in reality. A formal paper trail. Someone we hadn't spoken to in more than a year reached out to us a few weeks later. Her parents were hosting a neighborhood fundraiser at their home, according to a mutual contact from Syria's village. Printed flyers were being distributed across the community. Photographs of Soraya as a youngster and a picture of her with Liam during a winter event when they were dating were featured on the flyer. No context, no authorization. Tossed onto a piece of paper as if nothing had occurred. I snapped a picture of the flyer and forwarded it directly to our attorney. He moved quickly. The print company mentioned in the flyer's lower corner received a takedown notice demanding that any further promotional materials with Syria's image be taken off right away. The store obeyed without protest. The fundraiser was canceled in a few days. There was no explanation. None of her relatives contacted her to express regret or protest the shutdown. Then I got a message from Liam. It wasn't long. "This is most likely the final communication exchanged." They were still in a fantasy, he remarked, and he was relieved that neither of us was in it. Shortly thereafter, his fiancée sent a simple message on her Facebook account. Some families don't preserve memories, they preserve myths. In certain internet communities, the post became popular. Reposts and comments regarding personal experiences were made. The timing wasn't subtle, but it wasn't aimed at anyone. Soraya and I met with my parents that same week and gave them the whole story, not just the most recent events. From the analogies to the members of the block, the texts, the family meal with Liam, the fund-raising event. Without interjecting, they listened. My mother stated she wished we had told them sooner when we were done. My dad simply nodded and expressed his pride in the way we handled things. They offered no guidance. All they did was create room for us. We received a delivery a few days later. No sender name or return address. One item, an old framed picture of Soraya and Liam from a previous New Year celebration, was found inside the box. The same one that was on her parents' mantle before. No note was present. Not a message. We didn't require one. That following week, we mounted cameras throughout the house and gave the box to our lawyer. Motion sensors in the side, rear, and front yards. The delivery was recorded as part of the expanding case file. We weren't taking any chances, not because we thought it would end up in court. Soraya resumed writing that week. She didn't use fiction or generalizations to conceal herself this time. She wrote on the experience of being used as a stand-in for someone else's fantasy. She discussed how relationships may be internally destroyed by comparisons, even when they are made with the best of intentions. She wrote on what occurs when a family becomes so enamored of an ex that they fail to notice the person in front of them. On a brand new blog, she subtly published the first post. Just true stories in her own words, without names or places. Retaliation wasn't the point. Going viral wasn't the goal. Even getting others to believe her wasn't the goal. It had to do with taking back the area that had been taken away from her, individually. Syria's blog post, "The ex my parents never broke up with," began quietly making the rounds online throughout the years, one story at a time. It wasn't advertised. It struck a chord without any tags or viral pushes. It was shared, quoted, and commented on by people on family trauma forums who said it helped them express something they had previously unable to articulate. According to the article, families can maintain emotional ties to ex-partners for a long time after the relationship ends, and this bond may take precedence over the person their child ultimately picks. A journalist contacted the blog via its contact form a few weeks later. She was working on a piece on families that romanticize former relationships and the link between parents, children, and mesh. Drama didn't appeal to her. She was looking for true stories. Soraya consented to talk to her in confidence. Voice remarks via a secure channel. No identities, no pictures. She provided background information, addressed a series of questions, and maintained the focus on trends rather than specific people. The blog's contact form received a fresh message 2 days after the interview concluded. It was only a phrase with no name or email. "You'll be sorry you let this out." It was intended to rattle, yet the phrase wasn't dramatic. Our attorney located the IP. After passing through several masks, it reached a server block connected to a business where Syria's father had formerly worked years prior. But it wasn't conclusive. That information was noted and included in the expanding legal file. We didn't answer. We kept it a secret from the public. Syria was summoned in by Human Resources at her workplace later the same week. She was accused of being unstable and posing a risk to the workplace by publishing personal stories online. According to an anonymous complaint they received, AIR told her not to worry after reading her blog and asking a few simple questions. They weren't worried. She was cleared without any problems. One of the HR representatives actually confided in her that they were impressed by the way she had articulated her experiences. Then Liam sent another message. Through one of his work channels, he received a message asking ambiguous but insightful questions concerning Syria's family history, past relationships, and mental health. He informed me and blocked the sender right away. It added another piece to the pattern, but it didn't shake him. Soraya got a package at work a few days later. No address for return. The mail contained printed screenshots of her blog posts that she had written in black marker and with honesty. Words like homewrecker, manipulator, and liar have been written by someone. There was nothing we could verify in the handwriting. The message was obvious, yet there were no fingerprints. That following day, we reported it to the police. We next improved our house with new locks, motion-activated lighting, exterior cameras, and an alarm system that was directly connected to our phones. We didn't raise a fuss in public. We simply exercised prudence. Our therapist gave us a more comprehensive perspective. It wasn't until Soraya started the blog that the conduct began. It began when her parents recognized that they were no longer in charge of the story. Instead of pondering, they responded through channels, murmurs, and anonymous noise as the tales they had told themselves and others began to fall apart. I wrote something for myself that week. It was just a document I kept on my desktop, not a post or an open letter. The Stand-In is the title I gave it. It explored what it was like to be a character in someone else's story, to be viewed as the incorrect response to someone else's memories rather than as a unique individual. I kept it from Soraya. I didn't have to. Release was not the goal. It was for the sake of peace. Our motion lights detect anything a few nights later. Around 2:15 in the morning, the video feed revealed a person standing next to our mailbox, with their hands and pockets raised according to their stance and physique. The person appeared to be Syria's uncle, someone who used to work in landscaping and had been close to her father. However, the video had too much grain. No acceptable facial photo, no license plate. We handed the cops the video. They noted it and included it in the lawsuit that is still pending. Our neighborhood's patrols were subtly boosted. In case we decided to escalate, our lawyer started preparing a harassment case and adding the event to the schedule. Soraya then made her blog private. Any post that linked her identified to her tale was removed by her. The content was not removed. Although it was preserved, the public could no longer access it. To be secure, we started gradually stepping away from social media, cleaning up information, unlinking email addresses, and eliminating identifiers. We changed usernames, deleted outdated images, and modified privacy settings. Just steady, nothing loud. Back off. We updated everyone else while keeping our closest pals. They were no longer in need of access. We weren't in hiding. We had just finished exposing ourselves to public scrutiny. Not all things must be apparent in order to be true. The folks who never deserved your narrative were among the fragments discovered in the darkness, unable to rewrite it by reaching in. Someone we hadn't given any mind to in years made the final serious attempt to bring Soraya back. Her former piano instructor. The message was plain, yet the email was kind. He had been contacted by her mother, who said that Soraya was in a domineering marriage and had cut herself off from all of her loved ones. He said that even though he hadn't spoken to her since she was 17, he felt compelled to check in. We didn't respond. Our lawyer added the email to the harassment log, which was already getting longer every month. After we forwarded it to him, something came via the mail the same week. Liam and his fiancée had penned the card by hand. We recognized the handwriting, but there was no return address. It was brief. A blank card with a few phrases on it. We recognize you. We stand behind you. You're not by yourself. They didn't have to elaborate. We stored the card in a drawer in the kitchen. Online was the next strike. An old college photo of Syria was used to create a phony social media account in her name. Within a few hours, it uploaded ambiguous, cryptic comments about being silenced, power disparities, and emotional assault. Some mutuals saw it and alerted us about it. We reported the account right away, and the site removed it the same day. We kept a record, took screenshots, and documented everything. After a few days, something happened on my end. An anonymous message was sent to my company accusing me of participating in an internet smear campaign and urging them to look into my personal behavior. Just a sent link to one of Syria's since removed blog articles and some false accusations regarding my actions were included. There was no name. I displayed the complete chronology of all we had experienced and brought in the paperwork from our lawyer. HR stated they had my back and nodded. One thing became clear in that moment. This was no longer only an obsession. It was revenge. Every post, remnant of her previous blog, every connection that ever linked her name to her writing, was erased by Soraya. She shut off the rest and defended what was important. She informed me that she had more stories to share. She had just finished showing it to the wrong people. Shortly afterward, Soraya received a message via an old backup email. She received a message from a relative she hadn't spoken to in almost a decade. After analyzing the indicators, she made the decision to speak up. She claimed that after experiencing something similar, she had severed her relationship with that side of the family years prior. Emotional control, guilt, and a covert effort to incite opposition against her. She said that learning that Soraya was now the target didn't surprise her. No apologies could have conveyed the depth of meaning in that statement. A few weeks later, a mutual acquaintance led to a trauma recovery podcast. They wanted Soraya to talk about long-term manipulation, idealized ex-partners, and family responsibilities in an anonymous episode. She consented, provided that her identity was safeguarded by audio editing only, no names, and no pictures. Speaking calmly and clearly from a list of notes she had made on the back of a supermarket receipt, she recorded the incident in a single take. The episode didn't become viral when it aired. It triggered something, but it didn't have to. Quiet discussions in tiny virtual communities. Comments were made by those who acknowledged the dynamic and said that no one had before articulated it in that manner. Some said their parents continued to send their ex-birthday cards. Others related experiences of family members attempting to reestablish contact with someone they had long since parted ways with. We set up a separate inbox specifically for assistance, and messages began to stream in. A few were lengthy. Some had only one sentence. "You have no idea how much this helped me." We read all of the messages, but we didn't respond to them all. Our viewpoint no longer needed to be explained. Nothing needs to be proven. For the first time since the beginning of this, it was not as though we were the odd ones. There were others who had experienced a similar situation. We didn't have to yell to be safe. We simply were. No fresh postings, no cameras. Don't fake a grin. Only coffee-filled mornings, dog walks, and days when nothing noteworthy occurred, and that calm, Constant joy didn't require a crowd. We owned it, and it remained. It was silent for 6 months. No mail, no messages, and no phone calls via mutuals. Then, at our new address, a little hand-addressed parcel arrived. It was tidy, old-fashioned penmanship. It came from her mother's mother, Syria's grandma. We didn't identify the rural address on the return label. There was a bundle of antique photos wrapped with a fading ribbon and a carefully folded message inside the parcel. It was not a lengthy letter. Her grandma expressed regret without making any requests. She said that she had appeared more than she had acknowledged and had been silent for too long. She said that Soraya had never envisioned the abuse she had experienced. No one was excused in the letter. Reunion was not requested. Even though we had never heard from anyone in the family, it only reaffirmed what we already knew. Among the pictures were birthday and childhood images of Soraya, holidays, camping vacations throughout the summer. Liam was one of them. Her grandma scribbled a single sentence on the back of one after circling it with a pencil. They never abandoned this strategy. Soraya contacted her grandma and requested a meeting, but we didn't require specifics. Less than an hour passed throughout the visit. It didn't weigh much. No tears were shed. No one else was defended by her granny. After thanking her for the letter and forgiving her, Soraya departed without opening any more doors. We found out that Liam and his wife had departed the country a few weeks later via a neutral family contact. They switched numbers and relocated overseas. Not a word. There is no forwarding address. They completely shut off extended relatives based on what we've heard. A clean break. Soraya and I did something similar shortly after that. We discreetly packed up everything, sold the flat, and relocated to a distant state. However, a few people from her past still managed to find out. New phone numbers, new licenses, and a new home. We updated all emergency data, email addresses, points of contact, and even pet registration information. We didn't share the move on social media. We just disappeared from every detectable crevice they could access. We weren't just abandoning folks this time. They had created mental images of us, and we were leaving them behind. The ones against whom we were always measured. They attempted to mold us into them. Those expectations did not accompany us. In the first month following the transfer, I wrote something for myself. I then used a pseudonym to submit it anonymously to a literary journal. The article was a personal account of what it's like to be the one who takes the place of someone a family has never let go of. There was no assault. It was a reflection. The fact that it appeared in a little column was sufficient. Other than Soraya, I didn't share it. Through a personal connection, Soraya received an invitation later that year to discreetly join Advise, a nonprofit organization that assists individuals dealing with estrangement. No speaking engagements or interviews. Simply assist in creating support programs and researching options for those in like circumstances. Yes, she replied, but she didn't post it on social media. The work remained steady but silent. It has been a year since we last spoke with her family. A couple of our closest friends were invited to join us for supper. No toasts, no speeches. Simply delicious cuisine, cozy lighting, and soothing music. A brief time before everyone went, that served as a reminder of what tranquility looked like. We hung a framed artwork in the hallway with the assistance of one of our friends. This is one of Suria's blog posts from before she made the website private. I Belong to My Own Story was the straightforward title. We took in a medium-sized rescue dog the same month, who was a touch rough around the edges and anxious about loud noises. It took him many days to open up. We gave him the name Chance. He constantly made sure we were still there as he followed us from room to room. He has the same trust concerns as us, we joked. But he settled day by day. Reconciliation is not always the conclusion of stories. Some don't conclude with a revelation, a letter that makes everything better, or a last encounter that clarifies the suffering. There are certain stories that simply end. Ours didn't end with a door slam or a shout. It came to an end with a subtle, solid boundary, the decision to terminate a cycle. We didn't get started, and we at last created something enduring in that peaceful conclusion. Completely ours, but not flawless.